I personally, I like them when people have that connection with me as a DJ. I prefer it when they have the connection with other people on the dance floor, and you're just sitting watching this glorious tapestry. God, I seem to be mentioning tapestries a lot today, but this kind of jigsaw puzzle going on in front of you of people connecting, and that to me is better than any drug or any whiskey. And believe me, I really like whiskey.
Hey everybody, welcome to For the Record, a casual, mostly unedited conversation series presented by Grey Matter, where we talk to music heads about their stories and the music that makes them. I'm your host, McKeegan Boyce. Today on episode 37, I spoke with Dicky Trisco. Dicky is a DJ and music producer who broke through during the new disco and disco revival moment in the early aughts. And since then, the Scottish native has run and curated the respected house label Home Taping Is Killing Music, and he's toured globally, playing at legendary festivals like Glastonbury and at club nights alongside icons like Andrew Weatherall and Horsemeat Disco. In his words, he is addicted to the way music connects people and makes for better days, which made him an ideal guest to have on For the Record, where we talked about all the ways music serves as a connective force all around the world. Hope you enjoy.
I seem to remember when we met at the boat party thinking, there's just some people that's nice to talk to, and there's other people that you quite quickly try and sort of drift away. You were definitely one of the good ones. And there's a lot of good people on that boat.
Good. Oh, I'm happy to hear that. That was a good boat. That was a good boat. Yeah, just for context to people listening, me and Dicky met approximately 3 months ago, on a boat in Rio, organized by Murray, which is a collective label promoter in Brazil that was created by Gugo Rosselli, who is how me and Dicky first got connected. And yeah, I'm glad that we're here now talking. Now we're both on the other side of the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good place to meet. I mean, those boat parties, I don't know if you know, but, I've been doing Marie. This was my anniversary this year. I've been doing it for a decade, for 10 years.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you very much. And I've done every part of Marie. I've done the New Year's Eve. I've done the party on the 28th. I've done the closing night. I've done, but one of the main things that I've certainly been doing for the last 8 years is the boat party. It's usually on the 30th. It's usually like the really crazy sort of boat party before the big New Year event.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been an amazing thing, like an amazing journey, because there are some people who still, because Marie is very much a community thing anyway. A lot of people have been going for the whole 10 years as it's grown, and it's grown and changed in many ways. But there are some people on my boat, that have been there for 8 years, which is quite, to when you're DJing, I get so excited about it. Now me and Jason do it together, J-Criv, and it's I always say it's like 6 of the best hours of your life, every year, and to look out and see a lot of the same faces who've been making this kind of thing like a tapestry, for all that time. Very special. Yeah. And then the carnival has become a tradition now as well. I usually do the last boat at the carnival.
Yeah, that's a good tradition to have in your life, I think.
Yeah, we need more traditions like that. Eh? I'm not really one for.
Yeah.
Definitely not conservative, and I'm not really that into traditions, but that's a tradition we can uphold.
Yeah, indeed. May it last forever.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, no, I remember that. When we chatted briefly on the boat of just, getting your perspective on being in Brazil, and Brazil kind of, feeling like home in a certain way. And it's just like the way people welcome you. Absolutely. And open arms. And yeah, I mean, that resonates.
It sounds a bit cheesy, but it has definitely, and I know I'm not alone, but it's definitely been a life-changing experience for me. 10 years ago, I turned up in Fortaleza. Never been to Brazil. The only fucking things I knew about Brazil were probably Pele, the girl from Ipanema, and that was probably about it, actually. And I had no idea the journey, that I was setting off on, and in particular, Brazilians, they, as they make great friends, and it's one of those places, especially as a DJ, I travel a lot on my own, and I stay in hotels on my own. I eat on my own. Sometimes you have to eat, right?
Right.
And in Brazil is one of those places, if you walk in somewhere on your own, they're like, are you alone? Like,
Mhm.
just for one, because as soon when I arrive in Brazil, every time I probably get 50 messages saying "Bem-vindo" and asking me if I want to go out for a drink or dinner, or and I think honestly, it's made me a better person,
Mm.
and certainly made me want to express myself in different ways. And when I come back to Europe, increasingly, I worry about us, because there's a lot of miserable, lonely people here, and Brazilians are good at avoiding that.
Yeah, indeed. There's just a different level of, fluidity and, care and curiosity and interest in other people, I think, in Brazil. It's just like a very warm place, literally, and figuratively.
And
Um,
genuinely supportive as well. Like,
yeah.
everyone telling that you're a gato or a gata, and everyone responding to lots of people giving each other
Mhm.
support. Whereas, in Scotland, the UK possibly to an extent. There's that thing where we deliberately sort of put people down and say stupid stuff, in a kind of a funny way, So you walk in, somebody likes you, they'll say, "All right, you prick," or something like that, rather than and it's the complete opposite, And if you don't understand that, you can miss the humor. But also, I do wonder if sometimes you can just be too negative, even if it's being funny.
Being facetious. Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of polar opposites between Brazil and the UK, I must
Absolutely. And
say.
yet, there's this incredible, the all the British people I know who go to Brazil love it. I have never met a British person who goes, and Brazilians really like people from the UK. They like that sort of funny. They're big fans of London, which I'm not a fan of London. And I find it very opposite to Brazil.
Yeah.
Unfriendly and individualistic, and but
Hmm.
yeah, no. So there's this strange. Maybe opposites do attract after all.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah, indeed. Um, okay, so yeah, speaking of, these places and geographies, yeah, I would love to go back to the roots days, the beginnings.
Mm.
Um, we were kind of just talking about that because before we started recording, we were talking about how you were born in a small town in Scotland that happens to be where my co-founder Mark lives and was also born. So
I
yeah.
mean, I only spent about an evening there, I have to say. Then they whipped me out to Glasgow.
So yeah, take me back to those early days, and just kind of where you're from and like when your relationship with music first began.
Right. Well, I was brought up in Glasgow, and by the age of 13, I was in bands, pretty bad punk band, and I used to play in bars and all sorts of things that I shouldn't have been doing. And that's probably why I've got no hair now, and I can stay up for days and blah blah blah. And anyway, like I said, the band was pretty bad. We used to play like 50-minute versions of Cramps and Bauhaus songs, and
Hmm.
blah, blah. But that was the start of music for me. And then Glasgow, when I was a teenager, and I was, Glasgow was a great place for music, especially a big interest in disco and soul and funk, as well as punk and mod and everything. It was a city with shitty weather, so people sat in bars and clubs and drank a lot. So obviously it's very fertile for music. Yeah. And from that, I basically, I've spent all my life really in music, and didn't actually stay in Glasgow. I was telling you, I ended up in India for a few years from the 90s, where I lived in Goa for a couple of years, and I started my first music business there, which was making and selling cassettes in the hippie market. Very successful. I had very sort of long hair at the time and suspiciously tight shorts, lycra shorts. I mean, can you imagine? Fortunately, I don't think anyone. There's not many pictures from that time. It's a great thing about the '90s. You know, everyone's trying to get people to turn their cameras off now. You know, and not take
Yeah,
that.
indeed.
But you know, then it didn't exist. You know.
Yeah.
So then around 2001. What kind of by the time I was back from India and done a bit of this and that, we started up a label based around Glasgow called Deep Freeze Recordings. It was like Chicago housey. You know, we took samples from, we had a sampler, a mixing disc, an effects unit, and a tape recorder, and you know, we sampled disco records and made fairly average Chicago house. And from there, I just kept on running labels. And most things happened, to be honest, by accident, because I was really into running the labels kind of thing. And I didn't want to be a DJ in particular. And then we started doing label parties. And this guy that I was working with at the time, he said, "Oh, we need someone to play at the start." And I was like, "Oh, I'll do it." You know, and then I started doing it, and I thought, "Oh, actually, this is quite good." And then the same with making music. You know, I was a drummer, so obviously I'm not musical. You know, drummers, we were there to drive the car and, you know, and try and pull people and get really drunk, and then hopefully not drive back. Yeah, but you know, it all just moved on from there, really.
Cool. So I mean, so once you discovered, you know, this love for DJing, or at least that it wasn't so bad, then you could get behind it. You know, where did that begin to take you? Like, how'd that begin to shape your life?
Well, yeah, slowly I started to we started an edits label called Disco Deviance, which were very popular at the time, and a few other Secret Squirrels, and on the back of that, that was around 2004, sort of 2010. On the back of that, disco was having its real resurgence because of people making new versions and edits of stuff. So the gigs started to come in. You know, I started doing my own nights where I lived at the time, Dundee, and then before I knew it, there was offers to go here and there. And then again, by accident, this thing appeared. You know, this. I mean, I'm addicted to DJing because basically because I'm addicted to people, and for me, I love music, but music is all about people, and the way that it brings people together, the way that it connects you with those people that are coming together, and basically that look on people's faces when you're playing music and you see that thing where all of a sudden they're nowhere else in the world, and they're just there and they're there with you and the people around them. I personally, you know, I like them when people have that connection with me as a DJ. I prefer it when they have the connection with other people on the dance floor and you're just sitting watching this glorious tapestry. God, I seem to be mentioning tapestries a lot today. But you know, this kind of jigsaw puzzle going on in front of you of people connecting, and you know, and that to me is better than any drug or any whiskey. And believe me, I really like whiskey. And it's addictive, you know, and also, you know, I, you know, from the background I come from and everything, like, you know, I've ended up because of this thing, music and the way it connects. But you know, I've been everywhere from Japan to China to Australia to Chile to Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Colombia. You know, all the way up. You know, New York. I mean, it's an amazing kind of magic, really. You know.
Yeah, that can carry you all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, unless you fancy getting a lot of sleep, in which case you're definitely in the wrong job.
Yeah. As my high school teacher, Mr. Dick, used to tell me, you can sleep in your
Mr. Dick.
bed. Marty Dick. I don't think I've said his name yet on the podcast.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite, like what?
No. But what did Mr. Dick say?
Oh, he just said you can sleep when you're dead.
Oh yeah. I saw. I think the first time I played in Berlin, I can't remember the name of the place, but I played in this secret club at the back of a Korean restaurant. So you had to go into the Korean restaurant, and then you had to go through a door at the back. It was just a normal restaurant. Then you went through a door at the back into this secret little club. And I remember in the toilet there was a sticker when I was having pee. There was a sticker that said "Sleeping is commercial," which I thought was quite funny. And then we played that night. We played I think it was me and Pete Herbert who were playing there that time, and we played like all night to about 6-7 o'clock in the morning. It being Berlin. And then at 7 o'clock in the morning, we heard that there was another door at the end of our club where there was a load of noise and a lot of screaming sort of coming from in a sort of a K-pop sort of way rather than in a club. And I was like to the security guy, can I go in there? And he was like, no, like that's the double secret room.
Wow. Yeah. Rooms within rooms, raves within raves.
So yeah, no, sleeping. Yeah, I'll do that in the next life.
Yeah, indeed. Sleeping's pretty good though, I must say. I don't mind sleep. I mean, what are you've been all over the world. What are some of the favorite, like, when you think about and just kind of reflect on this journey, like what are some of the scenes and some of the communities, since you really see music as this kind of vehicle, this connective thing, between people, like what are some of the core memories of like being in different scenes around the world where you've like seen particular resonance between people?
Well, rather than a particular place, I mean, I haven't been a massive DJ in commercial sense or anything like that. But the thing for me that's very special is that I have had this opportunity, as you were saying, to travel and to know places, and also, I mean, I've had agents and. And I've had busier periods, when I've been all traveling all the time. But the very special thing, and I think quite unusual thing, well, other DJs always tell me that, I got into a situation where I'd been traveling to the same countries, which are quite an odd batch of countries as well. And I'd been going there for quite a few years and playing for the same people. So I basically, it would come to like September and I'd be like, September, Colombia, and then October, Mexico, and March, was Asia, or March or April, Asia, then down to Australia, and I kind of had, and then Europe in the summer. So I sort of had this little, sort of route every year that I would take and hang with, my little families in all these places. And, some of those, ended, some places didn't work out or whatever. But, in particular, I've gone to Singapore for a long time, got a lot of good friends there, Bangkok, Seoul in South Korea. I mean, when the first time I played in Seoul, I would not have predicted that it was going to become a really significant place for me, and that I would end up playing there for well over a decade, where lots of the great, very talented young DJs who I play with in the collective there, they're called Disco Experience, they kind of treat me, I'd like to say like a brother, but I'm pretty sure it's like a daddy. And we've had, a wonderfully long relationship. In fact, there's one guy there, I'm not going to say who, but there's one guy who I'd hung out with for many years before I kind of discovered one time that, he doesn't really speak English. And I kind of wondered how we'd kind of known each other and got to know each other, that, and how I could be this fond of him, and because there were always other people, again, Korea is one of those places where you rarely hang out with people on your own, you're usually, the food's amazing there. I love the nightlife in Seoul, and I've seen it really grow from, there was a lot of fairly commercial big clubs there that probably grew slightly out of this sort of the way that nightlife there is, like Itaewon used to cater towards the military, is they tended to be a little bit more about drink and ladies of the night and things like that, into a much more, a really proper club scene. There's so many great little bars and clubs and basements and stuff there, and some wonderful young DJs, so and I've been going, it's quite funny because I actually went down to play in Busan this time last year. And that was the first, I've been going to not only going to Korea, going to Seoul for over 10 years, but I'd never actually left the one area where,
Hmm.
where I played in all those 10 years until me and my friend Conan took a train to Busan. It's and I could say that of quite a lot of places that I've gone to a lot, like Bogota, Medellin, two other
Mhm.
favorite places of mine. Rio to an extent, Sao Paulo. My, I've been going to a lot of these places for a long time, but I'm not a great tourist.
Hmm.
I'm Scottish. I talk a lot. I drink a lot. So I tend to go to places, and I'm the kind of guy who gets up. I stay always in the same place. I go to the same place for breakfast every day. I go to the same bar every night, and I get to know people. That's
Mhm.
so I know little teeny places around the world really well. I know where very well at all.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of an exchange you make, though, right? It's like, if you pick one place, then you can use that, as your lens into, kind of the broader scope of,
Yeah, I
the.
mean, New York's a great example. Been going
Mm.
and playing there for over a decade, and apart from nightclubs, I know one little area of Clinton Hill in Brooklyn,
Mhm.
which is especially 10 years ago, was quite an unusual place to pick as my New York home. But my friend
Clinton Hill's
Jason,
amazing. I love Clinton Hill.
yeah, well, my friend Jason lived there, and Myrtle is one of my favorite streets, which is not everyone's favorite street, in New York. But for me, it's what I wanted from New York. It's got such a mixture of people and neighborhoods. Williamsburg and a lot of Manhattan didn't make any sense to me. It wasn't the New York I was looking for.
Yeah, it isn't.
Yeah, but I know that part of Clinton Hill pretty well.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good spot. It's a good spot. I lived in Bed-Stuy, my most recent,
I
most
have
recently in New
also
York, and
drifted to Bed-Stuy. I've got that far.
yeah, it's
There's
it's
some
right
great
next to
bars
Clinton
in
Hill.
Bed-Stuy.
In
So
indeed, yeah, Bed-Stuy is great as well. Yeah, I mean, maybe you're only experiencing, small pieces of these things, but it seems like you're in, some pretty good
yeah,
places.
well, that's the other fantastic thing about traveling as a DJ is that you know, I say I'm not a great tourist. I've been traveling since I was 17 years old. And I first went to Asia when I was 17 and Australia, and I traveled back, and I've lived in it. But again, I lived in India for 2 years. I only went to Goa and Mumbai. I never went anywhere else, but I knew those places pretty well.
I
But
mean, again, good. I was in Goa actually last November
oh, how was it?
for the first time. It was great. I went to oh God, what's the? It was one of the beaches that's really famous, for like Goa trance. Um,
Anjuna or
maybe
Vagator?
I think it was Anjuna, yeah.
All right.
And
That's where the hippie market was, where I used to
I
sell.
think I think I saw the hippie market.
Mm. Hopefully not the suspicious shorts.
I don't recall any suspicious
Yeah, I
type
probably they're
words.
probably not allowed since I was there.
Yeah, they were banned after you left. Um,
Can we just hold just a little second? I will. We're back. We're back. Where were we?
um, and Juno Beach, I
Oh
think.
yeah.
And
And is it still quite hippie, or is it fairly developed now?
it
Or
was pretty hippie. It was actually so Goa Gill.
well, I
Um,
used to know Gil. Yeah.
well, he had just died, and
Oh, did he?
yeah,
Okay. Oh, I
and
didn't know.
they closed down the beach, and I think the club. I can't remember the name of the club that it was.
There used to be there wasn't any clubs there when I was there, but there was one just opening when I first left, which was called Paradiso. But I don't know. I'm sure there's
Uh,
been a lot more clubs since then.
I need
That
to
was
I need to check
1996
my
that I
notes.
left. So
It was fun. I mean, I'd never really been to a trance rave before, and it was a bit transcendent, I must say. Just like being on the beach and
yeah,
dancing. It's
I
it,
mean, when I was there, I mean the music, it's not for me, but but there was a lot of focus at that time because back then in '94, there was a lot of focus on sort of this location of parties. It was either on the beach or in jungles or in really places that really sort of the party was really accentuated by the environment. And then also at the time, because you still had that strong sort of slightly hippie vibe. All the parties were sort of trademarked by who set them up. So they used to have Italian parties, French parties, British parties. So the Italian parties tended to have really good. They put a lot of strings between the trees, so it was quite artistic. The French parties, the music was quite weird, and it was a bit druggy. And the British parties were just fucking mental, you know. Yeah. So, but you know, it was I mean, I slept on the beach for 6 months. And I just had a roll up thing like a cowboy, and had an Enfield motorcycle, and we used to go down to Palalam down in the south, which at the time there was nothing there. There was a lot of naked people. Actually, there's quite a lot of naked people wherever I go. That seems to be. Anyway, enough of that.
Yeah, it could be good, could be bad, depending. No, naked people is great. Free.
Well, Brazil has its fair, you know, fair. What's the word? Fair dose of naked people as well, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely one of the things, you know, I definitely like to talk about, which, you know, again, you know, the thing about Brazil, about friendship. The other thing about Brazil, for me, and being part of the Marais community, and then as a result of being part of that, I've ended up traveling all around Brazil to play, from Fortaleza to Curitiba in the south, to places like Cuiabá, small places out right in the center. You know, I've been very lucky. I had Belo Horizonte, Brasilia. I mean, it's been amazing. But the thing that I suppose I love the most about it, as well as, you know, falling in love with the Brazilian music, is that cultural thing that's been going on in Brazil, which is that sort of, especially in the face of Bolsonaro, he was in, and you know, Brazil is many things. That's something that outsiders get wrong. You know, they tend to think that Brazil's all about samba. It's all about what, you know, especially over the last 7 or 8 years. You know, Brazil's been very divided. And there's lots of different, even musically, there's so many different influences in the north and the south. But you know, the thing that's been going on with the gay scene becoming much more confident to express itself, and then the way the gay scene and the carnival sort of fuse into this kind of interesting new, for me it's an interesting new sort of cultural hybrid, you know, where straight people are a lot more gay, you know, and express themselves in a much more open and a much more comfortable with their sexuality, even though they're straight. And you know, where gay people are also don't have to be so defensive and so partisan about their culture, and can share it with straight people. You know, it's a beautiful thing, and that in particular has blossomed on the back of Carnival. And while Bolsonaro was in it, it's pretty amazing thing to have seen, you know.
Yeah, totally. I think well, yeah, I think people are realizing there's just a lot of fluidity when it comes to like what, you know, what your sexuality is, and like people are finding themselves, you know, on that spectrum. If you've always thought of yourself as straight, exploring a bit more, seeing like what feels right, you know, to express,
Absolutely,
and
you
you know,
know.
vice versa. And yeah, I mean, I think Brazil is as a particularly expressive place by and large. Like it's sort of a, you know, kind of indicative of that, just as like as a very fluid place generally, more fluid at least than like, you know,
But not
Northern
all
Europe.
of it. I mean, there's plenty of it that's not fluid
Well,
at all.
sure. I mean, that's, you know, to your point, like the Bolsonaro stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's like you know, I'm from, you know, the U.S. originally, and I think, you know, kind of similar things happen there. Like people's perspectives
Absolutely.
are like the U.S. is one thing or another, and this is a huge place. Brazil is a huge place, like hundreds of millions of people who all contain multitudes, and are.
And the difference between the countryside and the cities, and I mean,
Brazil is
it's a lot
nuts.
more similar to the US than people, you know. It took me a long time to I remember starting to realize all the different influences, even in Rio, and you know, in the northern cities like Fortaleza and stuff, and realizing, you know, that Brazil is like the US. It's all these different states with different identities, and
Basically, yeah.
they think different, you know. And also, someone, I remember it was a bit of a worrying realization, but I remember the first time someone said to me in Rio, well, you know, anyone can be Brazilian, and I was like, what, fuck, I can become Brazilian, you know. I was like, oh wow, you know, like it's not some exclusive club. But it's
Yeah,
been great to see, and especially, you know, when you put it in context that, you know, I mean, there's a lot of fucked up places around the world, but you know, when you put it in context that it was a military regime really not that long ago,
true.
and now it has all this culture. It's not a melting pot; it's a cooking pot, you know, and it's fascinating country. You know, I'm in love with it.
Totally. Yeah, I mean that, you know, the military dictatorship also, like, you know, as I mean, created undergrounds, you know, as you know, that tends to do. And there's a lot of great, you know, music that came out you know, via that more oppressive mentality too. And like the stories of, you know, like Caetano Veloso and Gilberto
Sure.
Gil, like coming to London because they couldn't be in the country anymore because their music was kind of anti-dictatorship essentially. And those stories and how like that brought more Brazilian music to like the UK. And I mean, like, that has its own sort of, you know, cultural amplification throughout like these kind of political histories as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, it definitely seems that having some tension there and difference, you know, it does fuel, you know, creativity and change, you know, and I think maybe that's what's lacking in Europe at the moment, in particular currently, and then I think in the UK, you know, where there is a lot of decline going on, you know, that we've lost a lot of our edge, you know, and what edge there tends to be a wee bit coming from the right, you know, which is unfortunate from my point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And mine.
Yeah, well, you know, we're not forming a club here yet.
Yeah.
But the other thing, you know, like I say, you know, I can't remember who it was, but I remember someone in Rio saying to me once, this is years ago, that when I found out that the name for a costume uh, in Portuguese was uma fantasia, you know, and I was like, you know, obviously, you know, being English, I thought, oh, it's a fantasy, huh? And then this person said to me, you know, because when I first started going to Brazil, I had like a black t-shirt and denim shorts, you know, it was like, you know,
Hmm.
shaved head, you know,
Yeah.
like don't give anything away, you know, play safe. And then I heard this thing, you know, like saw everyone dressing up for the parties. You know, this was just at New Year to begin with, before I'd experienced a carnival or anything. But you know, it's like Brazilians would dress up for a party anytime if they
Yeah.
wanted to.
Yeah.
And then I heard this thing about Fantasia, and the guy said, you know, well, why would you be yourself when you can be someone else?
Hmm.
You know, and like as a you know Scottish people and British people in general, I think Europeans possibly in general, you know that thing you've got to be yourself. You know, you know, you've got to, you know, whatever the fuck that is,
Hmm.
you know, like, you know, you've got to be a man, or you've got to be a woman, or you know, got to, you know, for someone just to say, you know, why would you do that, you know, and as a result, my costume drawer is now a lot larger than it was before. You know,
Yeah. No, that resonates. Before I married a Brazilian, I didn't really have
yeah.
much.
Congratulations, by the way. I meant to say when you
Thanks.
said that, you know, I think that's a great thing, to, you know, to have done.
Thank you. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I feel very lucky. Not that just, I mean, she's an incredible person and like, uh, you know, outside of her, you know, Brazilianness, but that's also, you know, very
Yeah,
firmly
yeah.
entrenched
I mean, I'm
in
sure it
her.
wasn't just because of the Brazilianness, but
No,
it's a
certainly
good
not.
start. You know, it's a
Yeah,
positive
it's
start.
a good foundation to have, indeed. Um, cool. And now you're off to Asia again soon.
Yeah. Well, like I mean, when I first started touring, it was my first residency was actually in Poland, in way back in 2001, and you know, and I started playing around Europe, places like Warsaw and Berlin and Paris, Madrid. You know, the kind of standard sort of capitals and stuff. And then I had an agent for a while, who's a great agent, the best agent I ever had, Nico. And he'd been in China, and also a guy who I started making music with and DJing with, Pete Herbert. he had been playing in Asia quite a lot. So through him, I got a lot of connections, and I started playing in Asia, and it was the first place that mixed that magic of traveling to strange places that were much more unfamiliar, and using music as a tool to sort of build something sort of lasting there. And in particular, China was a place, to be honest, I will be honest, it used to scare me quite a lot when I first started to go there, because the Chinese had definitely been cut off for a long time, and were slightly suspicious of foreigners. A lot of the foreigners who were there doing club business were a little interesting, and some of the scenes were a bit shit. But for example, in Shanghai, I went from playing in fairly small clubs full of honkies, sort of expats and smart ladies, to finally playing one gig for a friend of mine, Alan, in this big club called, I think it was called Arkham or something, which had about 1,000 Chinese kids going wild in it, which was great to see that shift. So Asia's been a real place for me, and yeah, I'm about to go back there, playing in Bangkok and Singapore and Cambodia. I'm going to be playing in Siem Reap in Cambodia, which is near some really amazing temples. So I'm going to go out and see them. It's going to be stinking hot, humid, and then I'm popping down to Australia just for a couple of days. And then I come back for a week. So I'm going all the way that way. Australia is a very long way away. It's not as far as New Zealand, I discovered, but
pretty close.
And then I come all the way back for about a week to 10 days, and then I'm going to Miami, Atlanta, Denver, San Diego, LA, and ending up in Hawaii, which is very, very far the other way.
Indeed it is. In fact, Hawaii is not that far from New Zealand and Australia. I mean, it's still far.
I know who's planning this shit, right? I mean, it's just. But you know what? In all of those places, like I say, the thing that really, I love playing music, and I've been involved with making and releasing music for 20 years now. But the thing, when I look at that schedule and think about, oh my God, how many flights and how little sleep, but every one of those places is full of friends for me, and obviously people I haven't met yet and whatever, but that all of them are friends who I have great connections with. And so I'm not really that's I suppose what I was saying before. A friend of mine, Keith, said this to me many years ago, that and that's why a lot of people think I'm on holiday all the time and we're not working. I do actually get paid for this. It is my job, but it is also, I'm just going from place to place, visiting friends, and rekindling those connections each time. It's very fortunate.
Yeah, it's lovely. It is. To have the opportunity to have it be your job, to go, make music, bring people together, and create all these little families all over the world, and explore all these different cultures.
And also just arriving in Rio, thinking, caipirinha. Must contact, arriving.
Yeah. Pound queijo is, there's
in Seoul, and thinking, how am I going to do this soju shot with it's wonderful. It really is. I've been very lucky, and probably fortunate to still be alive, and reasonably healthy. But yeah, no, I think in the world that we live in, which is changing drastically and quickly, to be able to do something you love, and with people that you love, essentially, in an ideal situation, producing love, wow, it can't get much better, really, can it?
Yeah, indeed. That seems like a good point to transition into part 2, where I ask you some things about your music listening habits. So yeah, I mean, in the background of this, we're keeping track of like all of the different mentions of music, like musicians, artists, DJs, music venues, things like that, and we're creating a database and building out kind of a neural map of where all of these different things act as the connective tissue between people, very aligned with your perspective on what music is and how it brings people together. So my first question for you is is how you discover music, and I would love if you could frame it through kind of some of your favorite curators or outlets
How,
or platforms you spend time with.
so how I discover music now?
Yes,
Well, I'm probably. I mean, obviously, it's unbelievable how much music is available to us now.
this is quite
You know, as
crazy.
someone who not only existed pre-internet, but I mean, when I first started buying records as a DJ, we used to have to. There was a shop called Global Grooves in Stoke-on-Trent in England that really used to have all. Because just being able to even have the music, that was a start. Because everyone just thinks that when you get these people, as soon as they hear something, they want to own it. Back in the 80s and 90s, you would hear a song. There were some songs I heard, and I didn't end up owning that record until 10 years later, because you had to find it, and people of a certain generation can't imagine that, So back in those days, the importance of record shops, what was, I mean, it was unbelievable, You would have a record shop and you would have a buyer in that record shop who knew what you liked, and you go in and they'd have a pile of records for you, and you would listen to them. You know, 23rd Precinct in Glasgow. There's a guy called Billy Woods. There's a shop called Rubadub, a legendary record shop in Glasgow also. And like I say, you would go in and just listen through piles and piles of records and drink coffee, or it was a different thing. Whereas now, I mean, between all the online sites, as well as being able to listen to stuff on YouTube and Spotify, I mean, it's almost like most things in the digital world. It's the problem now is dealing with the swamp of information and data. Is it
Of course.
to the point of almost having to limit yourself? But I think for me personally, it takes me back to the whole thing of the traveling and the journey. I still like how it used to be when I was a kid, which was I used to hear someone play a track, especially if it's for club music, because I like all sorts of music. My first love was dub reggae, and I still love reggae music. But if it's stuff for as a DJ and DJing, I like to hear someone play it, and then I know instantly if I like it and if I want to play it. So going to hear DJs, listening to sets on SoundCloud or whatever, is a great way, because you hear that the music put into a context, and that can be. Whereas if you get a digital promo in your inbox on Monday morning at 9 o'clock, and you're sitting in some basement studio like this on your own, you probably aren't going to be able to tell if that track is great or not,
Yeah.
So I like that, listening to people, asking people, but also my taste and my DJ sets they are a wee bit like a diary. They're a diary, each track will be probably about either someone I've worked with, or someone that I have a connection with who sent it to me, or someone that I know that I've heard playing it out, or music, that we're releasing. There's a big part of that is just, music you're releasing. So again, the music sort of tells a little story about the people you're connected with.
Yeah, I love that. No, it's so, I mean, it's so meaningful when you're listening, when you discover music in a specific scenario where you're surrounded by other people, or it was given to you by somebody else within a certain context, like that becomes part of your, of your memory of your relationship with the piece of music.
Well, like my last three things that have been released, one was on Barefoot Beats, a vinyl only release that had Jason from New York, a friend of mine, Bernardo Pinheiro from Salvador, a track by me and Pete, my friend from, it was just, and I play all the tracks on that, and it's just about our connections, and then the one after that it's a great story. It's by a guy it's on our label File Under Disco, and it's a guy called Process Man from Salvador. And I went to Salvador 2 years ago. Must be 2 years ago, after Marie, and I was pretty high after 10 days of the festival, and we'd been in Boipeba, and life was good, and
Hmm.
and got to Salvador. My first time actually spending time in Salvador, not just passing through. And actually, via a friend of ours, he picked me. The process man picked me up that night to take me up and show me around Pelourinho. So I got in the car with him, and seemed like a nice guy. We drove, and the first two tracks he played me in the car were his tracks, and I signed both of them. And then we did some great remixes. J. Crib did one, I did one, and Jutro Mundo did one, and you know, it's great original Brazilian music, and me and Jason especially put a bit more of a club twist on it. But you know, it was all about, you know, it's not just a release. And then there's one about to come out on File Under Disco by an Indonesian guy, you know, right over the other side of the world. Even though Indonesians definitely, especially people from Bali, they kind of consider themselves the Brazilians of Southeast Asia for a number of reasons. And there is actually a real similarity. I used to have a friend called Dea who used to run a record shop at Potato Head, an amazing DJ and musician. And he used to sell me Indonesian records from the 70s and 80s. And there was a lot of hotel bands that used to cater towards Europeans and honkies, and they would copy Brazilian music, and there is a lot of interesting Indonesian sort of boogie kind of stuff that sounds quite Brazilian. But so anyway, the next one is by a guy called Munir, who's Indonesian, and I've done a remix of that, and it's about to come out as I go back to Asia. So you know, it's all part of we're back to the tapestry.
Yeah, indeed. Full circle.
Jigsaw. We need to come up with a better metaphor.
Yeah, I mean, tapestry is a great word. I like it.
Yeah. But he's another good example, you know, Dea, and he set up this record store called Studio Exotica in Potato Head. So every time I would go to Bali, I would just go. He's a very funny guy. And I'd just go and hang out there for days, you know, and he would play me music. He used to always tell me it was from North Korea, even though none of it was from North Korea, because he just has a bad sense of humor like me. And we would like buy food in, you know, so music's all, you know, and in Rio, going lots of record shops with people, you know, it's all about relationships, really.
Indeed.
So if you want to find good music, make good relationships with good people, and it'll come to you.
Yeah. Good advice. Okay.
I give a lot of bad advice. I think most of my friends would tell you.
Well, we haven't heard so much of it on this episode. Yeah, I mean, according to what you've shared here, it's been largely good advice. So
good.
All right. If you can remember the first record that you ever purchased and the most recent?
The first record, I would say, apart from crap that I was given, the first record I remember buying was "Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick" by Ian Dury and the Blockheads, which I still love. And I just posted a story with an Ian Dury song called "What a Waste." Which it was a great track. It's about a guy who's basically in the music business and just kind of saying that all of these other things I could have done. What a shame, you know, what a waste. Which pretty much sums up my life. But he's still a very important character to me. A very interesting man. His life story is amazing, and I love his style. You know, so and Chaz Janko, who was in the Blockheads, of course, that ended up making some great disco music that got played in New York and stuff. And then the last record I actually bought this. Well, I've got two things that just arrived the other day. One is a collection of Saigon soul from Vietnam, which looks, you know, it's just the kind of, I really like buying everywhere I go. For the last 10 years, I've bought really unplayable, weird music from those places. In fact, recently when I was in Sao Paulo, just before the carnival, I did a set of all the weird shit that I bought all around the world. And I'm not quite sure how it went down, but it was certainly an interesting journey. But I bought this, which is by one of my heroes, Maurice Fulton. And it's a repress of a track he remixed called "The Fall" by Rye, which is, I think, quite a poppy track. But Maurice is one of these eccentric the word genius gets passed around all the time these days. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really mean it. But he's a very talented producer. He's got an odd taste. He's a great DJ, and he does these. I like to think that they're like the classic early disco mixes of things, even though he's got more of an acid house flavor about him as well that he can express at times. He can do most things, but he when he remixes a track, he brings out something special. And I've always been after this one, so
Cool.
I wouldn't really buy a lot of newer music on vinyl anymore. But this I snapped up straight away from Juno, which is a store I like.
Cool. Awesome. I think that's the first time anyone's ever actually had the record on hand in physical
Well, I'm in the
form.
studio, so it was fairly, and actually that's an amazing it's an amazing journey from Ian Jury to Morris Fulton. I'm absolutely fine with that journey. I'd like to hang out with both of them.
Cool.
I remember years ago, me and Pete were playing at a festival in Croatia, and we were playing Barbarella's, the big open air club. It must have been Electric Elephant, I think. Big open air club. Barbarella's up on the hill, and we discovered that we were playing between Morris Fulton, who was playing first, and Prince Thomas, who was playing after us. And like they were they're like two of my like DJ heroes, both are amazing DJs and have the ability to make even tracks that are pretty shit sound really good because they know how to play them. And I turned around to Pete and I said, right, well, you could go on first.
Cool. Okay, who are three artists of note that you heard for the first time in approximately the past year?
Oh, Tiger Balm. I mean, I don't know. I may have heard Rose a wee bit, but certainly heard her more and more over the last year. I really like what Rose is doing. She has this. First time I heard her sound, it made me think of sort of a kind of a tropical boogie kind of take on Grace Jones or something. She has a lot of really nice recorded percussion, works with good singers. It's exotic, it's tropical. Did you meet her in Rio? She was
I don't think
on
so.
the same boat as me, but I don't think she was on the boat party that you were on.
Then I probably didn't. Yeah.
But yeah, and she's now doing stuff with my mate Jason for Razor and Tape. Yeah, and I like her DJ sets as well. They're always interesting, and it's like African, Brazilian, Mexican mixed up with electronics. She calls us twinnies actually, which I've never been called a twinnie before, especially by a beautiful woman. Like I mean, look at me. But she's cool. I really like her, and yeah. Who else? Diogo Strauss is a Brazilian producer who I really love. He's a very talented musician, a great producer, lovely guy, and he's been making a sort of modern take on the whole sort of Brazilian meets disco meets boogie, and he does a fantastic live show where he has like Congo drums, keyboard, and he does it all.
Cool.
And yet he manages to kind of capture the energy. He's a very talented guy. And a third one, I mean, again, Diogo, I have known about for a few years, but he's really been it's been building big time for him over the last year. And I can't really think of. I mean, most of the people that I follow have been around for a while. I mean, again, someone like Jason J. Crave, a massively talented guy. He's been about forever, but it's really, really blowing up for him at the moment, and he's got so many releases. I can't keep up with them, but I always play them.
I mean, that's probably the best way, to keep up with something and honor it is play it. Cool. All right, here's the big question, the one that everybody hates. You're going to a desert island and you get to bring 3 records with you. What are they?
Tullio de Piscopo Stop Bayon, definitely, because it was such an important record to me as a kid and such a Balearic classic, and still just sounds amazing. It's slightly odd, beautifully funky. It's got that. Oh, it's just a great record. Oh gosh, it's very cruel of you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Oh no, it's too cruel. I mean, there's so I'd have to take a reggae track, but you know, to pick one, is it a track or an album?
It's an album. I mean, yeah, I assume you want an album because I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
he's more
I would
music.
definitely take Augustus Pablo, probably Uptown Rock to Rockers or something like that. You know, like yeah, I definitely take an Augustus Pablo, and then it would probably, you know, if I've got some alternative funk, some reggae, what would I take as the last one? I would have to. I've been listening to a lot of jazz recently
Hmm.
because I was a punk as a kid, and then I got into reggae, and then I got into funk and disco and all that. So jazz was something that always sort of escaped me, you know. And I thought it was for sort of guys in Poloniex and stuff like that, you know, who clicked their fingers and maybe were, you know, not my kind of people. But then over the last 2-3 years, I started to really get attracted to jazz. I think primarily because it's not made by a computer. And more stuff, you know, in our culture is being made by a computer. And I myself have been guilty of putting music into computers and making it go in time and things like that. So it's easier for DJing and, you know, disco edits were. So something like, and I think it's what love about reggae, the reggae that I love, like Augustus Pablo, is that, you know, it's organic and floating and it's not in time and it's got mistakes in it and all this stuff that's incredibly human, you know, which is very, very essential that we hold on to that stuff. So jazz has become important to me. And there's a record shop in the city, Dundee, where I live at the moment called 13. And they started to get a lot of jazz records. And I don't need any more records because I've got thousands and thousands of records, although I'm still buying them. But so I started to buy one jazz record a month just to support the shop and so that I could go in and talk some shit. There's a woman in there called Moog who I think we've been having the same sort of polite shit conversations about nothing for about at least 15 years. So I like to keep that going. So you know, and one in particular, Miles Davis on the corner. It used to really annoy me because, especially for younger people, they probably when I spoke to some younger people, they don't understand. We used to read about music before we'd hear music, whereas now because of the internet, you can hear music immediately. You want to hear what it's like. Now on the corner, as I don't know if you know, I haven't got it yet, but on the corner, it has an amazing artwork, and it looks, and I really wanted to like it. And for years, I would give it a go now and again, and I just couldn't get it. But that's something I love about music, and that I think with TikTok and with what's going on in culture at the moment, there's this desire for everything in life to be instantly likable and to be instantly appealing, and for you to know it, which means that you know it because it sounds familiar. And I think if we lose the trying, you know, it's like those people. A lot of my best friends were people I didn't like when I first met them. That used to be a bit of a habit, you know. The people that annoyed me and stuff like that because maybe they were a bit like you, and also I like meeting people who are different to me. You know, the internet in particular is forcing us all to hang out with people who are like us, and that's a really bad idea.
Yeah.
And for the future of the world, it's a bit worrying. So yeah, I take On the Corner by Miles Davis because I probably wouldn't still get it, and it'd probably do my head in, but that would be good for me, you know.
I love that. That's a great reason to bring it. Yeah, to continue to maintain these kind of cultural edges and
Yeah,
open-mindedness.
and a sense of not knowing and not being sure and still asking questions because I mean I'm a really old guy. I was born in ancient Egyptian times, and
That's what I saw on the form you filled out.
yeah, and I've been listening to a bit of opera recently as well. Again, which used to, you know, I would have killed anyone who played me opera, you know, not that long ago. And now I'm kind of really fascinated by the whole costume thing, and Jason's promised to take me to the opera in New York, so you know, poor him. But yeah, you know, we have to keep on searching out, you know, fertile ground. Otherwise, we'll all be stuck with a headset on and headphones on, not talking to each other and licking each other anymore.
Yeah, indeed. That's a great way to wrap things up, I think. Right there.
Excellent.
A bit of hope, and diversity, and keep trying to find fertile ground.
Yeah, we've got to keep hungry, and we've got to want. I love strangers, and I mean that's why I'm a DJ. Every dance floor is just full of strangers, and that's great.
Yeah, indeed. Um, cool. Yeah, Dicky, thank you so much for being here. For folks who are listening who want to follow your music, come see you at a show, where's the best place for them, to tune in?
Well, I have a radio show which just went out today, actually, on Open Lab Radio from Ibiza. It's called International Sounds. That happens on the last Thursday of every month, and it's been going really well. So we've just gone to a guest format. So we have me for an hour and a guest for an hour, just
Cool.
those friends that I'm talking about, and it's music from all over the world. That's a good place to start. But SoundCloud, catch me on Instagram. There's lots of links there.
Cool. Amazing. And now that you've been through the gauntlet of this, and because you were an answer to this question, when we had Guga on the show, who's another music head that comes to mind that we should have on?
Who's another? I think Jason would be a great person to have on, J. Criff. I mean, he's had a very interesting journey with playing in bands, running a record store now, as well as a touring DJ, amazing musician and producer. He's got to have some stories, right?
That's what we're here for, the stories and the music, of course.
Well, listen, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. And I hope to meet you on a boat party dressed as an Egyptian sometime soon.
Let's do it within the next year. I mean, hopefully we'll be we'll be in Brazil when that happens too, because that's the best place to be.
Excellent.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Dicky. It was really great, to
Okay.
chat.
Cheers.
Awesome.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for being here. That's a wrap on another episode of For the Record, a conversation series with all manner of music heads about their stories and the music that makes them. It's a production of Grey Matter and a new Crate Coalition experiment in building connective listening graphs. We stamp every music mention you heard here, from musicians to venue owners to journalists to tech builders to DJs. And in the background, we're mapping these names to form those yet unseen connective threads between people. Want to get involved? You can check out our website at greymatter.fm or come hang out in the Crate Coalition Discord. See you next time.